milestone we're talking about in this video series for your 7 to 9 month old is sitting to crawling. Now, the reason why this is such an important milestone for your little one is that we had talked about earlier about how important it is for stability to come before mobility. And stability always comes before mobility. So being able to sit in a stable position before you become more mobile and using both sides of your body in a coordinated manner is always going to come after your base of support, how you're sitting, becomes stronger. And so in this activity, in these activities that we're going to talk about to help baby move from sitting to crawling, that's directly what we're talking about. Baby has to become strong in their stable sitting position in order to become more mobile to be able to crawl. Another reason why sitting to crawling is so important is because you're building independence in this little explorer that you have. And with building that independence and exploring, you're building more curiosity. And with curiosity comes greater levels and expansion of play. And with greater levels and expansion of play, you're building stronger self-esteem and self-efficacy through that trial and error that they're getting. So all of these motor skills contribute to that self-esteem and that social emotional aspect of growing and changing with your baby. Another aspect of why sitting to crawling is so important is this is a transition skill. There's so much movement with baby crossing over the middle of the body. And anytime you see anything crossing over the middle of the body, this kind of invisible line that we have that cuts us in half to two different sides, is called our midline. And every time you see baby crossing over the midline of the body, that tells us what's going on in the brain. And that when you see babies who cross over the middle of their body, it's telling us that both sides of the brain are working together and sharing information. And that's exactly what we want to see. We don't want to see babies who are just plopped in sitting and plopped in a crawling position, because it doesn't serve your baby for later skill development. It doesn't help them build stability before that mobility. Now, I want to talk a little bit about why crawling is important, because there likely will be somebody in your life that will reach out and talk to you about how their child never moved through the phase of crawling, never moved through that developmental milestone, and they just went straight to walking. And in fact, they probably walked early. Well, the reason why that crawling is so important for lifelong learning, strength, and athleticism is all about strengthening both sides of the body, the trunk, the core, the shoulders, the hips, the knees, that a child gets when they assume this position and they move in this position. When a child assumes this crawling position, or actually, I know this is crazy, but all the things you've been told till now are wrong. This is actually called a creeping position. Creeping is up on all fours. But it's traditionally referred to as crawling. But when your baby is up on all fours like this, they're getting so much work and so much strengthening and so much input and stability into their shoulders, their elbows, their wrists, and their hands. Their hands are able to move across the surface and gain so much strength in the palmar arches, and the thumb is able to develop. We need this thumb to develop the muscles necessary, because this position is what helps your child hold a crayon. It helps them write better. It helps them with cutting, feeding themselves, getting buttoned, shoes laced and tied and all that. Down here in the hips and in the trunk, this is what helps baby keep their balance as they get older. All the muscles they're working on in their spine, this kind of this position here is working on their abdominals, their obliques, their rectus abdominis, their glute muscles. All these muscles are working in this position here. Also, what's happening is in that hip socket, that hip joint there, it's getting stronger and stronger, because with this stability gains, your child is gaining strength. And so with that stability, you're gaining more mobility. And so that pelvis is able to move and rotate in all the different dimensions it's supposed to. When baby just moves to walking, the pelvis tends to move just first at side to side, just like this. Well, the pelvis needs to move, tip forward, tip backwards. It needs to rotate around. And what better way to practice that and work on the mobility, lengthening and shortening the muscles around the pelvis than to move through that developmental stage of crawling. And this is the best way to do it. Additionally, in this position, baby gets all kinds of nice weight bearing into the knees, the tops of the feet. They continue to work on the joint in the ankle so that they can gain that strong stability when they start walking later. So crawling is not just about crawling, or creeping is not just about creeping. It's about so many other skills that develop because of this position. And although it might feel like a little bit of a shortcut, like, oh, my baby's advanced because they're walking, it's important to make sure that our baby spends time in this position. Whether or not your baby enjoys crawling or not, there are different activities that we can work on to help baby move through this stage to help them gain the strength in their shoulders and gain the strength in their abdominals and in their paraspinals and in their hips and in their knees. So if this is not a preferred activity or position for your baby, there's other ways that we can work on these skills. So not all hope is lost, but it's an important stage of development for your little one to go through, this crawling. So the tools that you're going to need for this activity are bolsters. You might need a half bolster for your little one depending on their size. You need to find a motivating toy for your little one, whether it's balls or a rattle ball. Very fancy. You want to grab those items and make them handy. You may also want to grab your boppy pillow for your little one too. And we'll also be using your body as a way to help with your little baby going from sitting to crawling. So your call to action is to grab those tools, those bolsters, those toys, your boppy and your body and your baby. And let's get started with our first activity as we're working on that milestone of coming from sitting to crawling.